little different.
That's right.
Ready? Very good. All right, I would like to welcome everyone to the May 25th meeting of the Health and Education Committee. This is our annual joint meeting with the Schools, Budget Committee, and Health and Ed. All budget members, any other commission members, school board members who would like to participate in the conversation and in questions, you are all welcome to participate. The only folks that will be voting when I call for a vote will be Health and Education. Okay? So we have a very limited budget, we have a very limited agenda to begin with, so I just need to ask for approval of our past minutes.
Madam Chairman, I have reviewed the minutes from our past meeting and find them to be in order, and without objection, I move for their approval.
Very good. That was Commissioner Phillips with the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you. You have the special projects report that was sent to us in advance. We do not have any changes to that, so we're going to proceed with the school board budget. Welcome.
Madam Chair, if you would mind, we'll handle the amendments. We've got 2 in 141 and 1 in 142. If you want to take the 2 and 141 and vote on them simultaneously, or you want to join them together, or excuse me, separate those.
I always look to Doug for that. Can we do them together, or do we need to do them separate?
We can do them together.
Yeah, let's do it
I'll do
together.
an explanation for it. The first one is Fund 141, Fiscal Year 2020-2021 Budget Amendment. This Fund 141 in this fiscal year 2021 budget amendment budgets approved Esser 2 funds to reimburse the general purpose school fund in the amount of $4,815,314 for the fiscal year 2020-2021 for expenditures that were used during the COVID pandemic. Items such as additional cleaning supplies, substitute costs, contracted cleaning service, additional HVAC filters, substitutes for certified staff that were on the COVID leave, as well as already recognized cost for COVID leave. And also the transfer that we did earlier in this year of $1.5 million of our local funds out of 141 to sustain a cash flow in our student nutrition services. All right, the next one in 141 deals with our summer camp, our summer learning camp. We have approximately 7,200 students that we'll be working with beginning on in June 7th, I think it is, and that's in grades K through 8. As we learned from this funding mechanism that was provided by the state, we have a mixture of both state and federal funds. Therefore, we were requested to run this through our 141 and then reimburse that. The amount of this amendment that we are requesting to budget is $4,065,633, which is in the state federal funding for the operations for the state mandated summer camp. This will provide us with our teachers' salaries and additional nutrition, food, lunches for our kids, along with an SROs, along with transportation, and everything that would be included in a normal school day. This is going to be, like we said before, coming to us through federal projects funds and also state funds, and we'll be also utilizing Esser 2 and IDA funds. Motion to approve these 2 budget amendments from 141 for the fiscal year 2020-2021 as presented.
And this was the summer camps that were kind of dropped on you at the last minute, right?
At the last moment, yes. And the state mixed a little money. They took some, most of it was federal, and then some from additional state funds. And of course, we supplemented a lot of it with our Esser 2 funds also.
Very good. All right, any questions for the superintendent? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move to approve.
Commissioner Gurley, do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Phillips, thank you. Since this is money, Rachel, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Key? Yes. Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you. Okay. can
All
proceed.
right, the next one is our Fund 143 for the fiscal year 2020, 2021. This is a budget amendment for the Centralized Cafeteria Fund. This amendment budgets for additional cafeteria salary expenses and food costs to support Rutherford County Schools' summer learning camps, as well as to provide a temporary $3 per hour increase for hourly school nutrition department employees that will be working during the month of June of 2021. In order to cover the food service and staffing needs for the Rutherford County Summer Camp, this pay increase recognizes the great need for adequate staffing for school nutrition operations during the month of June of 2021, and the fact that our 10-month hourly cafeteria employees do not normally report to work to serve meals in the month of June. This funding is for one-time hourly increase will be provided by our additional federal USDA Seamless Summer funding. We're proud of that it's going to be carrying us through next year. Motion to approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 143 budget amendment for additional costs for food services for our summer learning camps, and to authorize a temporary $3 per hour pay increase for the month of June of 2021 for our nutrition department hourly employees, and to support the food service staffing needs for our summer camp.
Any questions on that?
Temporary means
It goes away after June.
move to approve, Madam Chairman.
Second.
Very good, thank you. Call the roll for us, Rachel.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Key,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon, Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Chairman Allen.
Yes, thank you. You can proceed.
All right, next is our our 143 budget highlights. Okay, you want to go over there? It's the highlights.
Sure thing.
I'd sent to Rachel, and she put it on the SharePoint. Everybody should have 11. I had 11 files, and I had put it in an order, so we can go through. If you want to follow along with me, I'll start on the Fund 143, the fiscal year 21-22 budget highlights, and then I'll tell you as I move to the next file, so we can all stay on the same page. And if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me, and I'll try my best to answer them. So basically I did a highlight page like I did last year for each of the three funds that have a budget. And we're going to start with the smaller one, is the Fund 143. It's our Centralized Cafeteria Fund. And what the Centralized Cafeteria Fund is, it's used to account for the cafeteria operations in each of the schools of Rutherford County Schools. Just a quick brief touch on the highlights of this fund. The school nutrition department ran continually in some fashion throughout the pandemic. Our cafeteria employees provided daily meals to the children of Rutherford County that were in-person learning as well as distance learning since March 2020, and continue to do so this week as we're wrapping up school. There's currently 48 schools that serve our students, with 4 of those schools being a satellite feeding site from another school with a full kitchen. In the upcoming school year, we'll be adding our 49th cafeteria operation with the opening of Plainview Elementary School, and want to note that that's 49 schools, and then we have our virtual schools. So with the opening of Plainview, Rutherford County Schools will have 50 individual schools this year. We centralized, this is something new for Rutherford County. We centralized school cafeteria personnel management this current fiscal year to align more closely with personnel management of other Middle Tennessee school systems. This allowed greater flexibility to better staff our cafeteria operations during the COVID pandemic, and it also allowed us to staff operations based on nationally recognized school nutrition labor benchmarks, meals per labor hour served. With this centralized personnel management approach, we were able to decrease direct labor through attrition this current fiscal year from 467 total cafeteria positions to 384 full and part-time positions. We did not lay anyone off. It was just through attrition. We matched the labor usage with the meals that were being served. Going forward, we will continue to utilize these nationally recognized staffing benchmarks for adding direct labor to our operations. Continuing the staffing process will help keep this fund financially sound and generate surplus funding to increase food quality and maintain quality staff while minimizing meal price increases. This proposed budget, like the general purpose school fund that we'll talk about later, it funds a 4% pay increase for all of our full-time and part-time hardworking employees. Additionally, the school board has approved a new salary schedule for our cafeteria managers to move our managers from an hourly pay rate to a salary pay rate. This will align us with other Middle Tennessee school cafeteria systems with our cafeteria managers' pay structure and recognizes the need for this position to be a professional exempt position. Our cafeterias were some of the first Rutherford County School hourly employees to utilize the electronic timekeeping system this current fiscal year. Up until this fiscal year, our hourly employees were all on paper timesheets, and that would involve about, with that many, over 2,000 hourly employees, that would involve about 5 reams of paper every 2 weeks just to do payroll with timesheets. We are now transitioning to the electronic timekeeping system. It's the same system that all the other Rutherford County departments are under currently. Our cafeteria employees were the first department outside of my department in finance to utilize this. All of our hourly cafeteria employees are now utilizing this electronic timekeeping system instead of paper timesheets, with significant savings in copy paper and man hours for this labor-intensive process. Going forward into the next fiscal year, this electronic timekeeping system will begin real-time labor usage information by school for our cafeteria management. And I'd like to add that on June 6th is the go-live date for all the rest of the hourly classified employees at the school system for the electronic timekeeping. So at that point, that'll be the end of paper timesheets in Rutherford County School System. That'll be a first.
Okay.
The last point, the seamless summer option has been extended by the USDA for the next school year 21-22, and what that means is when the pandemic began, the federal government said all children of school age will eat for free. It will be paid for by federal USDA dollars, and they have extended that through next year. So what that means for us, first and foremost, one, make sure a child has a meal when they're at school, but also that has eliminated our bad meal debt that we typically will be bringing forward, as a write-off to our school board during this time of the year. There's none this year for student debt, meal debt. We've been working, looking forward after this next fiscal year, and I know this is over a year out, but we've been working with our school board. We had an ad hoc committee that was created last summer to look at student meal debt and how to bring that down. A lot of those recommendations have been implemented, and there's a couple more that we'll bring to our school board this next fiscal year. So once meals are being paid for again, we can address to once again minimize student meal debt.
Good. Are there any questions on Fund 143? Do you want us to go ahead and vote on 143, take them individually?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, if you want the very next, if you turn to your next file, you'll see, if you turn to the next file, you will see the actual budget for the cafeteria fund with the 4% pay raised, with each line item for the revenue. In the expenditures, you see the 2021 current amended budget. You see the draft 21-22 budget in the second column with the increase and decrease down on the third column. It shows a deficit for this, but we budget conservative on this, and I feel strongly that this is going to be a good year for this cafeteria fund with all the changes they've seen. And at that point, unless you have questions, what we need would be a motion to adopt this fund.
Are there any questions from the committee on Fund 143? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll for us, Rachel.
Commissioner Key,
Yes.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon, Commissioner Gorley,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Chairman Allen.
Yes, thank you.
All right, next, so I'm going to go over the 177 revenue, if you will, approximately 7.5 cents on the county property tax levy. As you can see, currently, the first budget estimate for the fiscal year 2021-2022, 1 penny on the county property tax levy will bring about a little over $1 million, $1,899. And it's a shared penny, which we do with the GPS fund, 141, will generate approximately $856,269 on a preliminary estimate. As you can see on the second page there, we see the major capital projects. The current revenue for property tax, $7,506,740. The trustee collection from prior year, $67,590. Clerk and master collections, $38,860. Interest and penalty, $13,520. Pickup taxes, $8,450. Payment in lieu of taxes, TVA, $524. And of course, we discussed this previously in pay of lieu of taxes on local utilities with the sale of Murfreesboro Electric. We will no longer receive that. I think that was somewhere in the neighborhood of a little over $800 and something thousand. This is the total county property tax is $7,635,684. Business tax, $236,550. So a total local taxes of $7,872,234. Total revenue and operating cost, or operating transfer, $7,872,234. The trustees commission is $168,000, and the educational projects that we have budgeted there are $7,565,917, with a total expenditures of $7,733,917. Now, Mr. Lee, if you want to come up and go over projects. He's not only going to go over the projects for the 177 budget, but he's going to talk and show you, go over the Esser money that we're using.
Capital projects continues to be a big item with the school system, as y'all well know. So this year, we have, you have the same spreadsheet that you've seen in the past, but on the front, on a special handout that I handed out tonight, on the front, says Esser 2.0. When we started this calendar year, our capital projects was at $104,984,000. We were allowed in Esser 2 to allocate some of those funds to deferred capital maintenance. What you see on that front sheet that says Esser 2 is the projects that we have removed from capital projects that we're going to use Esser 2 funds to fund. So we are funding $5,553,000 out of Esser 2 funds under capital projects, and the projects are listed there on that sheet. When you go to the second sheet, which is an extension of what was in your packet from Mr. Beaudry, we have expanded our capital projects from 3 years to 5 years, trying to look out further into the future to see what's coming down the pipe. You see 2 highlighted in color, one green, one yellow. The projects highlighted in yellow are the ones that we're proposing to use Esser 3 funds to take care of. That's a little over $15 million. It's $15,100,000 that we're proposing to use Esser 3 funds to work on these projects to help us get further down the road. And this year, based on last year's funding of $7,565,917, what's highlighted in green is the projects that we're proposing to use out of our local tax dollars. So with our federal funding through Esser 2 and Esser 3, we're able to take care of a little over $20 million of capital projects that we've been out there to look at. So we're proposing the same that we proposed last year at $7,565,917. Any questions that I can answer on Fund 177? Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is there a deadline on any of the Esser funds?
Yes, sir, there is. We have 2 years on Esser 2 and 3 years on Esser 3.
And when did Esser 2 start?
We were able to start writing those purchase orders about a month ago.
Okay.
And Esser 3, we're still in the process of submitting our budget. We do not have those funds available yet, and
Basically, that's going to take a little bit longer due to the enormous amount in terms of monitoring, auditing, record keeping, all of the above.
So Esser 3's clock hasn't started yet?
It has not. We have not submitted our, I think August is the deadline for the submission of that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions on Fund 177?
Got a motion to approve the budget 177 as presented.
Thank you. I entertain a motion from the committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Rachel, call the roll.
Commissioner Cook? Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Key?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you.
Madam Chairman, can I ask Mr. Lee a question?
Yes, please.
Does this keep you up at night? Because I think it would me. Wow.
You proceed.
All right, before we get into the 141, I gave you a handout concerning the per pupil expenditures for the school districts, 145 in the state of Tennessee. You know, when you look at the per pupil expenditures and what it entails, everything concerning, a school, obviously more at risk, then that's going to be more heavy on what we fund. The age of the school, for example, everything from your facilities, heating, cooling, plumbing, you name it, okay? So that impacts it. Also, what impacts it is teachers. For example, teachers that have higher degrees, more experience, then your salary is going to be a little bit higher. So nothing is uniformed. One school can change from another school. In fact, the State Department of Ed started this a couple of years ago where they actually, they produced that copy which shows what, in any school district, you can go on and find out what is the per pupil expenditure for any school. Now, we fall as a district at 109 out of 145. That's primarily where we have been over the years, somewhere in the 2/3 of the bottom. It's not so much about how much you get, it's how you utilize what you get. You can't throw money at something and fix it, but I've always said if you don't have money, then you are going to have more problems than you can fix. So I say all that is because I think this budget that we're about to present to you is a very conservative budget. It provides our needs. At the same time, we're cognizant to the fact that we are responsible for spending our taxpayers' money in a way that's fitting for the school system. So I'm going to turn it over to Doug right now.
Okay. We'll start in your packet, there is a highlight page for Fund 141, and we'll start from there and go walk through the remaining parts of this budget. Now we're entering into the general purpose school fund budget, and as the highlight says, it says the general purpose school fund budget is the main operating fund of the Rutherford County school system. Highlights of this fund's budget operation this year will be the general purpose school fund currently has a county property tax levy of 1.0474. The current budget estimate for the fiscal year 21-22 year on what a penny on the county property tax levy will bring, the current estimate is $1,899. A shared penny, which we know we have to share based on the weighted average, of all the students in public school as a total in Rutherford County with the Murfreesboro school system. That shared penny is $856,269 on our current property tax estimate, with the remaining $144,630 is allocated to the Murfreesboro City School System of county property tax, and that's based on the WFTE-ADA and as required by state statute. Yeah. Nice. This proposed budget increases funded positions by 84 to 5,176 in the general purpose school fund operation. The detail of these additional positions is on the budget improvement summary page, which we'll look at momentarily. This proposed budget takes into account for the opening of Plainview Elementary in the fall of 2021, as well as an anticipated student enrollment of 48,000 students in school year 21-22. And like I said before, with the opening of Plainview Elementary, Rutherford County Schools will have 50 individual schools within our public school system, including our virtual school. This proposed budget funds a 4% salary increase for all certified and classified employees. Preliminary estimated expenditures for this proposed general purpose school fund budget is $441,796,206, an increase of $20,074,637 from the original fiscal year 2021 expenditure budget, and it is a 2.8% increase in expenditures from the current amended this current fiscal year expenditure budget. Our April BEP estimates were received on May 5th and have a 4% increase in the instructional salary component, while the State General Assembly passed a BEP hold harmless bill that was advocated strongly by the counties in Tennessee because when you lose ADM, the state would then pull back some of the BEP funding. The Tennessee County Commissioner Association, they advocated strongly for a hold harmless bill, which passed, to give a one-year stay in the BEP, that they would look at last year's ADM instead of this year's for funding. Well, when the smoke cleared, Rutherford County Schools, we did not need to have the hold harmless. We did not benefit from that because our April estimate was actually higher than our January revised BEP allocation. So we're growing, even despite what we've dealt with in this last 12 months. And once again, this budget is taking into account a growth up to 48,000 students. And Ms. Spurlock, would you like to touch on what we're seeing as far as kindergartners?
Yeah, one of the things that we did, and I think I've mentioned this before, where this year we had a reduction in our kindergartners, a huge reduction. And we also saw a reduction in our sixth graders, at Blackman Middle School. And one of the things that we determined there was because the city opened up earlier than we did, then they stayed over in the city. Now, they'll be coming back now. We're already seeing the numbers now that they're coming back. The kindergartners, they'll be coming into our first grade, the ones that were held out a year. So we're going to see a huge influx of those that stayed out are coming back.
We'll turn to the next file, and it's the revenue file. It's got on the top Rutherford County Schools 21-22 GPS budget revenues, and we can walk down through the revenues together. I'll hit the large variances. As you can see, and once again, if you have a question, stop me. What we see on the first column of this budget, or of this budgeted for revenues, you see 21-22 budget. That's our estimated original revenue estimates for this general purpose school fund budget. The second column is our amended revenue budget for the general purpose school fund as of yesterday. And the third column shows an over if there's additional revenue in that line item, or under if there's less. I'll go down and hit the large variances. The very first column, you see a 3.6 mil increase in current property tax revenue, and that's from the growth on the tax base. Not from a tax increase, but just the county, obviously, and that's no secret to any of you that you know this county is growing significantly. We see in pickup taxes and trustee collections prior years, there's some differences. I worked closely with Lisa Nolan to make sure these estimates were accurate and conservative. So before I got up here, I want to make sure that your finance director was good with these revenue estimates. Local option sales tax, as you can see, there's a significant increase in the local option sales tax. There's a $9.3 million increase. Two things that drove that was, well, the more than two, but one of the issues that drove that increase was, if you recall, this time last year, we set the sales tax budget lower than the original fiscal year budget from last year for sales tax estimate, because once again, we didn't know what was going on. What we saw in the national media, COVID-19 was just coming in. We were not aware, so we budgeted very conservatively. Now, that increase is still conservative. And it comes from, we've had discussions already before, and I know this commission has had discussions about how the state, through the revenue department, has changed how they do collection for online sales tax, and also dropping the limit, that they would, if you're an out-of-state company, that you have to remit sales tax to the state of Tennessee if you have nexus with your business in Tennessee. So those things have brought strong sales tax collections into Rutherford County, especially for the unincorporated area for the county. Did you have something saying? No. Okay.
And Doug, didn't you say they had dropped it from, was it 250 to 100,000?
Yes, ma'am, and they're studying that again because they're looking at other states and what they've done with that, and to make us uniform, because they see how it's benefited other states. So.
And then also, I think you told me the tax had previously been remitted based on zip code, which meant it went to the cities.
Yes.
And now it's being remitted based on where the package is delivered?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. They can now track where those sales are occurring. So instead of the cities receiving that as in the past with the zip code, now with the software they've utilized for these businesses to be able to track better on the sales, that situs sales tax is going to the unincorporated section of the county instead of to the city, because once again the sale was there.
Awesome, thank you.
We see business tax has a good increase of almost $500,000, and once again that's a conservative estimate based on what's happening right now as our businesses are growing in base. The local option mixed drink tax, some of that increase I'm sure is attributed to this commission last fall voted to place on referendum to have liquor by the drink to be voted on by the voters. The voters by over I believe it was over 75% voted for to have that in place. So once again, that opens up for restaurants in the unincorporated area to be able to serve liquor by the drink with meals. Dropping down, very de minimis changes, but, well, before I go any much further on it, I want to touch on that. Back in 40162, payment in lieu of taxes, local utilities, that drop of $818,000, that was the Murfreesboro Electric payment in lieu of taxes. That drop is from the sale to Murfreesboro Electric. That was a payment that was made for over 50 years to the county from the electric department. Of course, with the sale of the electric department, that went away. Obviously, they're now paying with the ad valorem, which is spread with the property tax levy instead of just the direct payment straight to this fund as in the past. The remaining funds that you see, the $151,745 in that line item, that is Nashville Electric. They have some service area in the northern end of the county, so they pay a payment in lieu of taxes for that presence in Rutherford County by state statute. So I'm accounting for that with, of course, just under 15% of that payment, estimated payment, will still go to Murfreesboro City School Systems as required by law, as that is a metropolitan government that electric department's coming from. We see going down below very, very small changes. E-rate funding, we had a drop. That was because E-rate is a reimbursable program through the FCC, which is just to put internet connectivity into our school system. The increase that we had in this current year was money coming back from the construction of Rockville High School with putting, internet hardware, connectivity hardware in there, and we got the reimbursements for that. Dropping down, the next large increase would be our BEP, and as you can see, that is straight, that $3.7 million increase is straight from the 4% increase in instructional salary component funding. I want to draw your attention to, even though that is a good increase for BEP funding, notice that the majority of this budget is carried by Rutherford County taxpayers. It's not the state of Tennessee's funding, it's Rutherford County. Why did I say that on the increase? Small increases for early childhood education. I had a small drop in driver's ed because that's generated by fines coming out of the court system. With the court system closed, I wanted to be very conservative with that. I do understand that's now reopened and they're backlogged. Tennessee, the state revenue sharing TVA, once again, conservative estimate for TVA revenue share. That is an interesting, Jerry, I spoke to our school board about that last night. That is a very interesting scheme, how they share that revenue with the counties. With the city of Murfreesboro receives state shared revenue from TVA as well as the county. The way the city receives that state shared revenue is based on the population of the city only. For the counties receive that state shared revenue based on basically a proration that's been in place since the 1930s, where like 40-something% of the share that the county receives is based on population, 40-something% based on land mass, and around 14% based on TVA land in the county. So what that winds up being is Stewart County in West Tennessee with 14,000 people gets more state revenue funding from TVA than Rutherford County does. So if there was ever something to revisit, that might be, some of these state shared revenues might be one of them. And that actually was something from Tasser that had said that needs to be studied of growth going forward. The other large thing was that the difference was that the COVID-19 Esser 2.0, that was just the reimbursement. These are things being reimbursed, the one-time reimbursement of costs for already spent items. Next page. The other large differences, I added some additional for indirect federal projects. Those are indirect costs that we can take off of these grants for doing administrative work on them. And then the Esser 2.0 transfer, that's once again one of the things you just were voting on that we were transferring back. And that's going to be some more cleanup as we go forward before June 30th. I want you to note that the revenues I placed in here did not include one-time federal grant money. I did not want to inflate this. So this is a very conservative but realistic revenue budget. Any additional funds that we'll get in grants, we will bring it before this commission after our school board so you can approve that funding with what it's going to be spent on. This is the recurring funds.
Excellent.
And that is our revenue estimate for next fiscal year for the 141 fund. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue side before we proceed?
Any questions on revenue? You can proceed.
Your next page, what I prepared was just a summary page, so you could see with this revenue and the expenditures, you could see how this fund would track if it was passed as it was presented to you tonight. So I'm looking at Rutherford County General Purpose School Fund, FY 21-22 proposed budget as of 5/25/21. This is with the 4% increase in presented budget improvements. We see an estimated July 1, 2021 assigned, unassigned beginning fund balance, $42,806,693. That's the part of the fund balance that is not restricted funds for specific purposes. It was money that could be used to balance a budget. We then add the 426,474,041 in estimated revenue that we just went through in detail. We have the estimated expenditures, which you have the detail, and we'll touch on here in a minute. The estimated expenditures of 441,796,206, and that leaves us at an estimated June 30th, 2022 assigned, unassigned ending fund balance, $27,484,528,000. That provides a assigned, unassigned ending fund balance for next fiscal year of 6.22% of expenditures, which is over double what the state minimum is required for this fund. The budgeted deficit of this presented or proposed budget is $15,322,165. And I put down below that as a note, the original fiscal year 2021 budget for this fiscal year for the General Purpose School Fund had a deficit of $15,031,515 with $421,721,569 budgeted dollars in expenditures for the original year. So go ahead.
It's really just about 2 3/4, about $275,000, a little give or take a little bit more than last year.
On the budgeted
On the
deficit.
budget.
And that would be with adding the additional expenditures. So where this is less percentage-wise of a deficit than what we started out with when you look at the size of the expenditure budget. As you can see, this is an increase. This proposed budget is an increase of fiscal year 21-22 original budget expenditures over the current fiscal year of the original budget of 4.76% and to date, and that is with all of the issues that we've had with COVID. It's a lot less when you look at the amended budget, but I wanted you to see the original budget because it's been such a unique year.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Gurley?
Mr. Bottery, can you tell us how much of the increase can be attributed to the opening of Plainview versus just growth and expansion? Because we are opening a new school this year.
I think it's 1.76 million, close to 2 million when you add everything in, salaries and everything. A little over 2 million, not much over 2 million.
I do always think it's worthwhile to remind everyone in terms of the operating funds that when we open a new school, we do not get funding in advance of those children showing up on that first day. So it's on us to float those operating expenses for that first year, and then the revenue comes in behind them. So the fact that we're able to do that with that modest of an increase, I think is pretty impressive.
One of the things we were able to do is we were able to transfer more teachers from the schools that were being rezoned, so that helped quite a bit.
Any other questions for Mr. Bottery?
Yes,
Commissioner
Madam
Key?
Chairman. So, Doug, I know that it seems quite impressive that we're almost 2 times over what the ending fund balance for the state should be. Historically, how has that been, and how do you feel about this 6.22 on the ending fund balance?
There is a minimum for 3%, and then there's something called cash flow. And any businessman is when it's, and Ms. Allen just alluded to that, is a minimum. When I look at it, I not just look at that I feel good about it, to answer your question, for that 60%. But because when we start up, and we discussed this, we had this issue with the cafeteria fund at the beginning of this fiscal year. There's fund balance and then there's cash flow. We were delayed in getting funding from the USDA. Now they've caught up with us with the meals served. So cash flow became a very significant issue at the beginning of the fiscal year. You'll see a lot of cash burn as you start up because you're hiring teachers for all this new growth, all the other additional, you budget for furniture, but then you wind up with additional student desks. So there's all sorts of things that cash flow from a good fund balance, spendable fund balance comes into play.
The larger school district you are, the more of your ending fund balance. 3% is not what we would do. I mean, the larger you are, the more cash flow and a higher expense that you're going to be.
Yeah. And I see in other counties, I've seen where they'd have to do what's called a tax anticipation note before property taxes come in because they get their fund balances and some of their operating funds down so low that they actually, sometimes every year, they're issuing a tax anticipation note. And it's just to make cash flow, make payroll until their property taxes come in. And I've never seen Rutherford County in that, so I'll do my best. I'll never have us in that situation if I'm here.
Commissioner Blair.
I was trying to recall last year. I remember the conversation. We were pleased with the ending fund balance, how healthy it was last year. Do you remember what that was? For some reason, I thought it was a little over 5.
Yeah, it was around. The estimate was around 5. Yes, sir.
And this year, even opening a school, it's going to be over 6.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Doug, before we move on, will you explain again to everyone the principle of maintenance of effort? This is one of those funds that's required of us by the state, so I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on what that is.
Maintenance effort with the BP, to get the BP funding, the county has to provide a certain amount of local funding to receive the state funding. Rutherford County has been over that and maintains over that minimum funding. When you provide a budget of revenue to the schools, to the general purpose school fund operations, at that point that becomes a maintenance effort. So as we add additional revenue here, this would increase that maintenance of effort. Obviously you see that in any county with a growing system. That's just like with your business. As you add another school, you add more people, you fund that. So with this budget, you would increase the maintenance effort. The majority of that increase is coming in property tax and sales tax that, you're just recognizing it's there when you move the budget up to marry that amount that's actually coming in.
Thank you. Okay. Proceed. Mm-hmm.
We'll go to next is our budget improvement summary. And what this is, it's just a 2-page summary that gives you in detail all the new additions of personnel to the school system in this budget. And if you'd like, on your detailed budget, behind that, and I don't want you to switch back and forth, but I just want to make note that I have broke this apart with the new personnel into the line item on the second column of this. You would see a expenditure line item. So for example, you have on the front page, you have the certified personnel new, and it shows growth teacher positions as well as additions for Plainview elementary teachers. If you go down that second column, the 71,100, 116, if you added all of those 71,100, 116 positions together, you arrive at 23 positions increases in that line item. On your detailed budget, when we see that, you'll actually see the 23 right there in that line item. So you can see this, what we're talking about on this improvement page is in each of those line items with the growth. So we did that so you can follow that and see where those positions are going. So just walking down this briefly, And once again, stop me if you have a question. We see the costs for each of these things. You see the certified, degree, and experience raises in this plan. This is as our teachers or certified staff, as they gain years of experience or they gain a new degree, they get compensated for that, for staying with our system. And that $2.8 million is to cover those step increases for the teachers. Our classified staff, those are our custodians, our maintenance personnel, our accounting clerks, our HR clerks. Just like on the county side, they have a step system. That $648,066, that accounts for their experience raises as they stay with Rutherford County. Then below that, you see one of the largest parts of the increase of this budget is that 4% raise for our certified and classified employees of the $13,915,039. Moving down below, we see our growth, the request for our teachers and our support staff. As you can see, we are requesting 10 growth teacher positions. These are regular ed, music, art, and gifted, along with ESL. And I want to make a point that those growth positions are not, this is growth. This is instruction, and our attendance department has identified, based on the growth that's coming, these growth positions would be going to this school or that school. Growth interventionists, for 3 of our schools is right below that, along with some instructional coaches. And then below that, you see Plainview, the addition for Plainview elementary teachers. And I want to point on this right here is, if you notice, there's not that many requested teaching positions for Plainview Elementary. Even though we're opening an entire elementary school, the positions that we're requesting for the classroom are those specific ones for like music, art, and ESL. The other teachers are going with their students as they go from other schools to this newly zoned school. We did that in instruction. Our instruction department worked hard to cut down the amount of additional requests for staff funding with this move. We see also an assistive technology specialist, and that's going to be district-wide to assist with all the large amount of technology that has been brought about not only by COVID, but also we have striven for years to bring down more laptops for the students' use. Then this is the special education. We have 5 growth positions for teachers for special ed and 3 for Plainview. We have some growth for our CTE positions of 5. We have an attendance teacher position, just a part-time to a full-time. And then the student counselors, we have 1 growth for Plainview Elementary, and then another one for Laverne High for is it a middle college, sir?
Yeah, it's early college. You know, we had 35 graduates this year from Laverne High School that graduated with a high school diploma and an associate's degree. We've expanded with a partnership with Motlow. Now I think our next cohort's going to be 60. They will actually be attending over at the Motlow campus in Smyrna. And they'll have a guidance counselor, and they also will have an AP there to address all their needs.
And really, this group needs to know how innovative and exciting it is that you have launched a middle college. That's huge.
The early college is going to allow them to go into a 4-year university as a junior. And this is
remarkable.
Obviously they've taken advantage of it and did a tremendous job. One of the things we see in the future is to expand this. We're going to let Laverne take the lead on it, and then as we get more and more fidelity with it, we will end up opening it up to possible other students within the county.
I mean, that's beyond, dual enrollment was kind of our first step in that direction, and that proved to be very successful. But the idea of adding a middle college, that's going to be life-changing for some of those students to be able to enter into a 4-year institution already a junior. That's fantastic.
While we're on that note, our virtual school opened up this year, was our first year. We're moving to expand that. Currently, we've got 300 students in it for next year, but we're still accepting applications, and we're going to be doing some advertising. We're going to be putting some billboards out and things of that nature to attract some to the virtual school, because some of them, we went to our first inaugural graduation. It was outstanding. And, I think this is another avenue that we can address some of the needs of our students.
And you might want to touch on that. Just one more thing that people don't realize is that the state does cap us at how many folks we can have in that 1,500.
1,500, we went through a process where we had to apply. They actually held us back a little bit on that. And then we got more information from their staff attorney that they were not really doing this the way it should be done. I don't know if we'll get 1,500 next year, but I don't really know if we need 1,500 in terms of making sure this is addressing all the needs that the students have. But I can see it in the future, and not too distant future, of growing to that capacity very easily.
And then, too, it also helped us recapture students we had lost to other districts.
Absolutely. One of the things, Tennessee Connection is a partnership that partners with some of the surrounding districts. I think we had I want to say almost 100 kids in Rutherford County that are actually attending a virtual school that's partnering with Robertson County.
But that just proves we had an unmet need that now we're trying
Absolutely.
to meet. Yeah. Very good. Yes.
The rate, the ADM from the state for a virtual student, is it the same as, so?
The virtuals, they do the same number of hours as we do, in terms of the 6.5.
Do you think, or did we pick up any homes?
We did.
Homeschool?
Actually, we had some homeschoolers come back. You're absolutely right. I already registered for next year.
So some of that 1,500 could be a large number of homeschool children.
Could be. Absolutely.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, you can proceed. Thank you.
As you can see, dropping down to the remaining lines in the certified personnel that's being requested, we have we currently have a part-time athletic director for the system, and we're moving that to a full-time position.
One of the things on the athletics director always gets me when people call him an athletic director. It's athletics director, but I'll get for you this time. It's one of the things that we're getting so large. There is a huge amount of money that is being captured by our student athletes here in Rutherford County. This athletics director we want to keep integrity in our programs. We want safety in our programs. And we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities of a diverse population to be able to compete for some of these positions as head coaches. So what we felt like, in order to make this work, we need to make this position a full-time. Now, it's not just going to be athletics. They'll be doing a lot of training and safety, making sure coaches are following the safety protocols, doing a lot of networking with the NCAA, making sure that our kids are meeting the eligibility standards, are on track to qualify in order to get these scholarships. So this investment really is something that we'll see going forward when we start, and quite frankly, we'll start tallying how much money is being, we do it in academics, how much money are our kids acquiring through athletics to go to college.
And the remaining requested positions would be the media specialist, our librarian for Plainview Elementary on the opening, and then the next two, those are very much needed for our instructional department. It is a social studies specialist and an IT tech specialist to work district-wide on those areas, and then the remaining is 2 additional assistant principals, 1 for Plainview Elementary, so they will start with 1 AP at Plainview, and then the additional AP to head over the middle college for Laverne High School. And that is the total for the certified employees in this budget. The next page is our classified personnel request. Just briefly go through this. You see a lot of requests for the ESL educational assistants, along with some growth education assistants for Plainview. We're requesting 4 for Plainview. We have 15 SPED EAs. 3 are assigned to Plainview Elementary, with the other for growth. That is driven greatly by the IEAs that our SPED students have. So if IEP,
Yeah.
their IEP, would you like to talk about it?
Those are like, we'll call ancillary EAs for students who need that one-on-one. Quite frankly, we see a lot of it coming into our system, out of the city system. And of course, the city system has them, for K through 6, and then we end up, 7 through 12, so we get them a lot longer. One of the things that we try to do is, a kid will come in and transfer in, and in the IEP, it states that they have to have a one-on-one.
Explain what explain what the IEP is.
Individual education plan. Basically what it is looking at the student's academic or social handicap, if you will.
It's a customized plan for that student.
For that individual student, yes. And if it's in there, then we actually put it in with the caveat is as they acclimate to the school and they mature, because they're like any other kid, they're going to mature along the way. That we will revisit it every year to determine if that's necessary or not. Now, quite frankly, and you'll look at another, I think he may have mentioned in here, if he hadn't, he will mention it about an additional staff attorney. One of the largest issues of litigation occurs in special ed. And quite frankly, you could spend a lot of billable hours, and we have, in order to address the needs of special ed. There's a lot of, throughout the year, there is a lot of IEP meetings where the lawyer from for the parents or advocacy group comes in, and we are trying to do it with one staff attorney who's trying not only to do that, but do all the other things that we're doing. And so we actually have this request in the budget also. So get back what I'm talking about is we have seen an increase in this. We've talked about, and we sometimes the student does need the one-to-one. However, if we can determine that some point during that time, we can come back into the IEP meeting, meet with our parents, and show them a plan of how we can address what they need without that additional staff member. And that's going to be one of our major components. If this budget is approved as it is right here with this additional staff attorney, that will be one of our goals. How do we work with these parents to make sure we're meeting the needs of the IEP at the same time reducing that additional support in a one-to-one? Quite frankly, sometimes it's we can't keep the same EA because they may find a job and go somewhere else. But that is an area that we'll be addressing.
As we walk down below that, we see some small additions, like for a part-time 120-day attendance secretary. We have one of our long-term employees in our attendance department retiring, so this is once again some transition as others are getting trained. Coordinated school health data analyst. This is to help the coordinated school health director. That will be a department of 2 then, so that's for the whole system. So she obviously needs the help. An additional special education secretary for the special education department, and that's just, once again, for what Ms. Spurlock just talked about, it's just the sheer workload that department is dealing with. We see below we have some additional for like low voltage cable tech. That's just for our IT department. As we increase in size, we need additional support for our IT. You see below that the hires, the funded positions for the Plainview Elementary clerical staff. You have one bookkeeper, one secretary, an attendance clerk, and then you see the custodians for Plainview. You have 3 12-month custodians along with a 12-month lead custodian. This last year, we did an analysis of our custodial help. Mr. Lee and I worked together on this, that we looked at, and Mr. Lee came with the knowledge from other outside saying, typically you staff custodians based on square footage. So we had all the square footage of our buildings, including our portables. We brought that together and we staffed for all the system based on square footage. So those 4 custodians is what that square footage would bring. If that would be like if that was contracted out, or if that was in like I said, other systems would look at that for assignment of custodial support. Below that, we see some growth for our maintenance department, 3 growth for plumber, electrician, and construction workers. This was requested last year along with the Preventative Maintenance HVAC crew. We pulled that from the budget last year because of the pandemic ramping up. And of course, those are needed, especially with the growth.
If we can talk a little bit on the preventative maintenance, I think we mentioned this before, but typically what we've had is had our custodial staff do the replacing the filters, trying to clean the coils and things of that nature in some of our units. It didn't get done the way it should, and sometimes we suffered a little bit of maintenance that we had to correct it. So this right here is what it says, preventative. Keep us from having to replace units and making sure that they can last longer.
Below that, the special education services attorney that Ms. Spurlock described in detail earlier. I want to note that in the budget, under the Board of Education line item, we had for contracted attorney, we had added $30,000 last year for additional costs for special education needs. I pulled that $30,000 back out, and we added this attorney to help towards that cost of that attorney in-house. The other 2 down below that is for my office. It's a federal project staff accountant, and this is federally funded. We will be getting funding from Esser, Esser 2, and then Esser 3 for the next year. And then at that point, I'll place that position in the federal projects fund, and that will be funded with indirect costs from the federal grant. So that will not fall on the local tax base. The second one is I'm converting an hourly position to a salaried position in my office for payroll. Both of these positions, I have half of my key personnel in my office are 65 years and older. This is an attempt to seriously begin cross-training to replace those people as they retire. I think Lisa Nolan has probably talked to you about some of those issues too. I mean, we got really good. I inherited a phenomenal staff 2 years ago, but once again, I know someday they'll want to retire. So I see that, and I need to start moving. Below that, you see the additional bus routes. We have 7 regular bus routes, and that includes some for Plainview and some for growth up in the northern end. Then we have 2 routes budgeted for SPED. And then we have the rate change of 5%. That is what the contract that was brought before the commission before. That's the amount for next year for the 5%. That's your increases by line item in the budget for the new growth. The next thing that you have, unless you have any questions on that, the next thing you have, and I'm not going to go, this is the detailed expenditures. I'm not going to go through that. I know this is something that was provided to the commission before this. The changes, of course, the main changes was the 5% dropping to the 4%, and then with the revenue side, just updated revenue estimates, including that BEP. So back to, I sent one last file to the commissioners. and the top of it says major variance in object codes and proposed budget of 5% or $25,000, whichever is greater. In this budget, this proposed budget of $441,796,206 of expenditures, you can go through this document, and any line item with more than $25,000 variance, it gives you an explanation of why it changed.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Gurley?
I would like to thank Mr. Bodery and Mr. Spurlock for, this is, I think, for some of you, it's been much longer. For some, it's their first time. For me, this is year 6. And this is the amount of information that we've received up front and in advance has allowed us to, I think, be prepared to vote on this tonight with a good conscience and with a good knowledge base of what's going on and what's needed, and without taking 3 or 4 hours of discussion asking specifics that we've had the opportunity for a month now, or at least the last couple of weeks, to study and get ourselves well versed on. So thank you for that.
One thing I will point out, and obviously last night is when we voted, the board voted on the pay increase, so that should be a 4% there. I think you see it.
Yes.
I mean, that's okay.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
That's easy.
Yes. But that is all I have, unless you have, I'll take any question you have. I'll try my best to answer it. But that, back to the summary page, that's the budget that's in front of you. As you can see, the detailed revenues ties that estimated revenues. The detailed expenditures ties to that summary page. And you see where that lands us with the budget.
You have done an excellent job preparing us in advance and then also tonight. But are there any questions from anyone on the committee? Commissioner Gammon?
I have one. If you could, first of all, I want to thank you for, I've asked you a question and you've come back properly and gave me the answers to some of the questions I had. I want to thank you for that. Growth under the certified personnel, growth plumber, electrician, construction workers, is that employees that will cover all the Rutherford County schools? I don't see I know that comes right after Plainview. I wanted to make that.
Yes, sir. That's for all of them.
All of them.
Yes.
And what does a construction worker, what would be his job?
Everything you think of. Right there he is.
Construction worker basically does everything from digging ditches to pouring sidewalks to drywall work to hanging doors. What you would consider a general construction carpenter is what that description is what that job description is.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else on the committee have questions?
I have I don't know if it's a question, but a comment. And number one, I know that last year we pulled a lot of things, and I see some of those things coming back, which causes the increase that we're looking at. And although you mentioned folks retiring, being a retiree and living on a fixed income, things like this kind of choke me, and I like to see zero-based budgets and then what we need over that. And some of the questions that I asked before we got to this meeting were also promptly answered, David. And if in my simple mind I can decipher certain things, like last year's budget was $422 million almost, and this year's proposed budget is $441 million. That's about $20 million bucks. But if you take the opening of Plainview and the cost that's associated with that, plus the additional people that I really do think are needed. And for Plainview, that's another 29 folks, if I can add all this up. But if you look at the 441 versus the 421, considering the cost of opening a new school and the additional people, we're talking about just over 4%. And to me, that's a figure that I can swallow and live with. And supplying me with that information is helping make my decision a lot easier. Once again, the $441 million is still hard for a person like me to swallow, but I don't know how to get around it. And if we're ready for a motion, I'd move that we approve and forward to budget the proposed total expenditures of $441,796,206.
Second.
Very good. Before we go to vote, I would like to open the floor up for discussion to any of the county commissioners who are here. If you've got any questions or comments, anything you'd like to contribute to the conversation before we vote. Mayor, if you've got anything before we vote. Okay. Look at what a great job you did.
Madam Chairman, I would like to commend the directors, Mr. Spurlock, Ms. Botry, and the school board. I really didn't have hope that the ending fund balance would be as healthy as it is at 6.22. So I think just what Chairman just mentioned about the transparency, but you're good. Being good stewards of the tax dollars, I think, is what put us in this position where you can give your employees a raise this year and improve the campuses and the capital projects. I'm really happy and impressed with your ability to manage the funds that you've been given in the past and what you'll do with these funds.
Thank you.
Mr. Key?
Madam Chairman, thank you. So I concur, and I want to reiterate the transparency that we've seen. This is my first year going through such a budget process, but if we didn't have answers to the question, it wasn't your fault. It was because we didn't ask, because we've all spent time with you prior to this, and thank you for that. I did a little survey. I was just curious, because we're talking about a budget of about $500 million for Rutherford County for the schools. I did a little survey of my family and friends, and I said, how much do you think Rutherford County spends on their school budget? Oh, they scratch their head and they'd say $25 million. 40 million. One of them even got up to 100 million and was sweating. It's like, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. We have to educate people, and hopefully they'll, take note. But I commend you. And to look at our place in line with expenditure per student, that's incredible. The caliber of school that we have, and we're not up here in the 15,000, 20,000 per student. We're the bottom third. Thank you, guys. It shows a great team cohesion here, and I think that's what we need to keep going with. So
appreciate that. I think that's what we're here to do. We want to maintain a quality of education for our students. At the same time, we want to be good stewards to our taxpayers' money. And I'm going to take my hat off. I don't have one, but I'll take it off, figuratively, to Mr. Botry, because he's constantly looking at ways in which we can do things efficiently, at the same time lowering the cost. And it's not about trying to be the bean counter and all that stuff. It's about getting more bang for the buck. Mm-hmm. And
I second that motion. Good job, Doug.
Thank you.
And before we vote, there is one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is part of the reason that we're behind the 4% is the state of Tennessee has told teachers they're getting a 4% raise. What they don't understand, and what many folks in the community don't understand, is that they don't pass along a true 4% raise to those teachers. They pass along, they calculate it based off of, an average salary or starting year salary, something like that. So it doesn't equate, I call it fuzzy math. It doesn't really equate across the board as a true 4%. So we try to go in as a county and make that number whole, so we have to add to it. They also don't provide funding for the folks in the education system who are not teachers. They don't provide raises for them. So in terms of equity, we feel a responsibility to give raises to those folks that are part of that entire campus. So that's going to be your cafeteria workers, your office, custodians, things like that. So that's another place where we as a county step up and do a little bit more than we're expected to do. And I think that all of that in together, I think, feeds into the success of the school, because everybody feels valued and everybody feels appreciated. At least that's our goal. So, and then too, I can't say enough about you all, and also about the school board. Thank you so much. I know initially, you guys had come out with a 5% recommendation. You went back, kind of looked at the numbers, saw where we were at in terms of the impact that it would have on taxes, came back instead with a more conservative 4%. And so I, for one, appreciate that you didn't make us put the black hat on and be the bad guys, because we would not have wanted to pass that with a tax increase. So thank you so much for stepping up and doing that. I know that wasn't always easy. So, all right, if there's no more discussion or questions or comments, Rachel, call the roll for us.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Key?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Gurley?
I would like to remind people that spring fling is going on. Many of our school campuses are supporting athletes and their families from out of town. If any of them are watching, spend your money in Rutherford County. We get a lot of revenue from that. It's happening behind my house as I speak. Apparently also, I ran into, at an establishment here on the square, a gentleman with his son. Apparently it's also visitation time for MTSU, and he'd been spending some money here in Rutherford County before heading back to Georgia. So encourage these people to make them welcome in Rutherford County and encourage them to spend their money here.
Very good, thank you.
One thing, just to add, Commissioner Key mentioned someone said $25 million as a guesstimate. The mayor might remember back in 1990 when we were first elected to this commission, the budget was over 50. Back in 1990, our total operating budget was around 70 million bucks, and the school portion of it was around 50. So way back when, it was a lot more than 25 million. So just FYI, that 25 million is a dream. A good dream, but a dream.
Rachel, do we vote yet? We got so busy bragging on them, I could if we voted or not. Okay, very good. All right, if there's no more business for this committee, we stand adjourned. Thank you.